I was always aware that I was second best when I was a kid. Anna is my given name, but Bella is what everyone calls me. I come from what seemed like your average middle-class family. I am the younger daughter. One of my sisters, Catherine, or Katie for short, was an exceptional kid. Her naturally blonde hair caught the sunlight beautifully in every photo. She was 3 years my senior. Mom was often snapping pictures of her picture-perfect angel to share on social media or in the family album. Dark hair, hazel eyes, and an interesting face, what my aunt referred to as my own brand of pretty, made me far from hideous. Interesting wasn't good enough in our household, though. While Katie exemplified the norm, I merely existed. There was no ambiguity about the bias. We would spend whole weekends at the mall whenever Katie needed new outfits. Every time I had a request, the response was the same. "We'll see next month, sweetie." Because Katie wanted more area to study, she was given the larger bedroom. For my 16th birthday, I received a watch, and it wasn't even a good one. But she got a car. The high school graduation ceremonies were when the rubber met the road. Our parents hosted this enormous celebration in honor of Katie's graduation. She was going to college to follow in her father's footsteps and become a bank manager, and her father was quite proud of the news. Her promising future was toasted by everybody. 3 years down the road, I outperformed Katie academically and earned my diploma. As I sat at our kitchen table, clutching my college acceptance letters, I vividly recall my parents giving each other the side eye. Mother began to say, "Honey," but she avoided making eye contact with me. "The funds for college are simply not available at this time, given Katie's tuition and the challenging market conditions." He said, "Maybe you could work for a year or two, save up some money." Silent I sat, taken aback. I was informed that my education could not be funded by the same parents who had recently purchased a new laptop computer for Katie's college expenses. I sobbed myself to sleep that night. However, I will never again weep over their partiality. I embarked on my job search the following morning. I was hired as a housekeeper at our city's most posh hotel, the Grand Plaza, within a month. After finishing college, Katie went back to her parents' house to save money while I moved into a small studio apartment across town. Although it was difficult at first, I eventually came to prefer living on my own to remaining at home and seeing Katie enjoy our parents' undivided attention. It was my apartment, no matter how rudimentary. I was proud of myself every night. When I got home from work, even though I was fatigued, I was making it on my own. My job at the Grand Plaza Hotel required my undivided attention. I took each cleaning assignment as a chance to learn the ins and outs of the hotel industry, in contrast to my coworkers who grumbled about the difficult customers and never-ending rooms to clean. "Bella, you're the only one who consistently gets perfect room inspection scores," the chief housekeeper, Mrs. Rodriguez, informed me after only 3 months. "How do you do it?" "Simply attempt to consider my desires in the event that I were to remain here," I responded while adjusting my uniform. I went from housekeeper to head maid in just 6 months. Room 742's guest, James Richardson, and I first crossed paths at that moment. His salt and pepper hair and fine suits gave him a distinguished appearance. He was likely in his mid to late 40s. As I oversaw the cleaning of the 7th floor one morning, I became aware of his observation. Exclaiming, "Miss," he demanded, "could I have a word?" A brief inquiry regarding additional towels evolved into a 15-minute discourse regarding the inner workings of the hotel. He encountered me once more the next day. Next up, on the 5th day of his stay at the hotel, he casually said, "Come have dinner with me tonight. I know a lovely restaurant downtown." My back straightened, and I met his gaze squarely. "Mr. Richardson, I appreciate the invitation, but I need to be clear. If you're looking for a temporary arrangement during your stay, I'm not interested." Rather than taking offense, he found humor in it. "All right, then." Still, I extend an invitation. No more than dinner. I respectfully but firmly declined. Throughout his 3-week stay, he maintained an amicable yet polite demeanor. He gave me his contact information on the business card he left behind when he checked out. I thought that would be it. I put it away. After a fortnight, things began to shift. I was first offered a position at the front desk, which was a major advancement, then summoned to the office of the hotel manager. My promotion to team leader of registration occurred before I had a chance to adjust to my new position. A few weeks down the road, I was promoted to the position of front desk assistant manager. I went from being Mr. Richardson's assistant to running the whole front desk in the 2 months after he left. It was dizzying how quickly I was making progress. I had faith in my abilities on the job, but this appeared too wonderful to be true. Subsequently, hushed conversations began. Someone in the reception told another she must be sleeping with Mr. Blackwood, implying our hotel owner. I overheard this conversation. Her rise was so rapid. Weren't you surprised? That kind of rapid promotion is unheard of, you know. I attempted to disregard the rumors, but they hurt. Although I had put in countless hours, stayed late, and studied the ins and outs of the operation to win each promotion, I was still accused of sleeping my way to the top. I had no idea I had an affair with Mr. Blackwood. We had scarcely crossed paths. The secretary for Mr. Blackwood contacted him on a Monday morning to set up a meeting. I felt queasy since these unannounced encounters usually portended problems. 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I rapped on the door of his office. "Come in, Bella," he beckoned. "Please have a seat." A towering guy in his 60s, Mr. Blackwood had gentle eyes that appeared to be assessing something at all times. Before raising an eyebrow at me, he shuffled papers on his desk. Starting with, "You've done exceptional work here," he continued, "but there's something we need to discuss." It broke my heart. Finally, they had come to the realization that I was unqualified for the position. "I think it's time for you to go to college, Bella." I blinked, my mind racing. "I'm sorry." "Sure, the hotel can accommodate your schedule," he went on to say. "We want you to get your degree while maintaining your position here." I was really disoriented. What I got was completely unexpected. I resorted to stammering when I was asked a question. "Thank you, but why?" He retrieved his desk drawer with a smirk on his face. "You know, I don't often take advice about personnel decisions from outside sources, but in your case, a good friend insisted I pay attention." He retrieved a business card and passed it across the table. "If you're curious about why your career has taken such an interesting trajectory lately, give this number a call." My heart skipped a beat as I took the card in my hand. Mr. Richardson had given me the same number months earlier, and it was the same. At home that night, I sat for an hour staring at the card before deciding to pull out my phone. As I dialed, my hands trembled. "I was wondering when you'd call." That familiar voice responded on the second ring. You're friends with Mr. Blackwood." I was able to inquire. "I can't help but laugh," James said. "We've been friends for 30 years. His faith in my ability to discern talent is unwavering." "So all these promotions were entirely earned?" I wanted to make sure, so I pressed. "Yes," he said with conviction. "All I did was advise him to look at your possibilities. You are entirely responsible for all that you have accomplished." Hours passed as we conversed that evening. He went on to say that he had been pleased by my work ethic, thoroughness, and inherent leadership skills while he had been here. That determination to succeed in spite of overwhelming circumstances was something he recognized in me, and it made him think of himself from his youth. He invited me to the same restaurant months ago, and 2 days later we ate there again. On this occasion, I consented. I decided to study hospitality and restaurant management in college, so I registered the week after that. Whether it was emotionally or practically, James was there for me the whole time. I learned things that no textbook could ever cover from him, and he helped me study at the same time. Our bond grew stronger over time. Nothing happened at a climactic moment or due to a huge romantic gesture. Being together eventually became as automatic as breathing because of how close we became day by day. After 6 months of that initial phone call, he finally stated, "Move in with me," in an evening conversation. We were perched on his upper floor balcony, gazing down at the twinkling cityscape below. After our intimate but beautiful wedding a month later, I packed up my studio and moved into his penthouse. During our coffee date one afternoon, my buddy Sarah gushed, "Girl, you hit the jackpot. Happily married, gorgeous, and really pleasant. There shouldn't be any men like that." Despite my amusement, she was correct. James was the ideal husband I had always dreamed of. I had never felt appreciated as a child, but he made sure I felt that way by paying for my college and praising my professional accomplishments. Family reunions were, to put it mildly, an adventure for me once I discovered bliss. Katie, who had always been the star of the show, was difficult to keep a man engaged for more than a few weeks. Her career at the bank was going well. She'd made it to assistant manager, but her personal life was a shambles. During holiday feasts, I would notice that she would look at James and me with eyes that betrayed a hint of jealousy. My once uninterested sister is suddenly fixated on me, even though she used to disregard me unless she was in need of something. "Did you see how Katie was looking at your ring all through Christmas dinner?" Subsequently, James inquired. I thought she was going to drill a hole through it with her eyes. "She's always been used to having the best of everything," I said softly. "I don't think she knows how to handle not being the center of attention anymore." When my parents began their effort to have Katie wed off, things became much more uncomfortable. At each and every family function, my mom would surround me. "Sweetie," she would remark with that sugary tone she employed when she desired something, "I'm sure James has some wonderful friends, single ones. You know, Katie isn't exactly a spring chicken." Dad cut to the chase. "Someone as accomplished as James should marry your sister. You should lend her a hand. That's just how families are." I couldn't help but notice the irony. My beloved parents, who struggled to pay for my education, were now attempting to take advantage of my connections for their own profit. Katie eventually admitted to me, "James must know lots of eligible businessmen," as she cornered me in the kitchen during Easter supper. "Why haven't you introduced me to any of them?" My sister caught my whole attention as I gazed at her. Her flawless blonde locks remained, but her eyes had an intensity I had never witnessed before, a desperate edge. Maybe because I prefer not to be involved in other people's romantic lives, I responded thoughtfully, "Besides, relationships aren't about just finding someone wealthy, Katie." "Sure thing," she retorted. "You already got the rich husband." Keeping my distance was the correct decision, and I knew it as I left that conversation. I felt uneasy about Katie's demeanor toward meeting a rich man. It seemed more like she was searching for a reward than someone she wanted to adore. I was certain I had finally discovered the one. It would appear that the following 2 years validated my first belief. However, changes started to occur, albeit subtly and initially. It all began with minor details. James started getting home from work later and later. His once infrequent work visits started happening more often. Initially, I rationalized his actions in my mind. Life was hectic for him. The organization relied on him. This was merely a passing phase. When he texted, "Sorry, darling, emergency board meeting," he missed yet another supper I had made. "This trip might take 2 weeks instead of 1, he would say, barely lifting his eyes from his phone. With each passing day, our home seemed drier. Our penthouse apartment became a lonely reminder of the amount of time I spent there alone as the sound of my heels echoed through it. At last, I had enough. It was late one night. With the intention of having an honest discussion about our situation, I stayed up waiting for him. I replied, "James, we need to talk," as he stepped in at 11 o'clock at night. I had never seen him look at me that icy, detached and nearly irritated before. Yes, we do. The events that followed seem to have occurred in some one person's life rather than mine. He stated abruptly, I want a divorce, as if he were addressing a weather emergency. My love for you is faded? I doubt I ever did, actually. It was as if someone had punched me in the gut. Oh, really? How? If there is an issue, James, we can address it. Nothing needs fixing, Bella. That was it. I will have my attorney contact you. After that, time sped up dramatically. I received my divorce paperwork within a few days. I was completely out of luck as a result of the prenuptial agreement I had signed, which I had dismissed as a mere formality. Not the place we lived, not his money, not even the pieces of furniture we chose together. I was so disoriented that I crammed all of my belongings into 3 suitcases. I contacted my parents since I had nowhere else to turn. Mom, Dad, I need to spend some time with you, I whispered, attempting to contain my frustration. Just until I figure things out. I should have guessed everything based on the other end's quiet. Oh, honey, Mom said with an air of insincere compassion. Renovations are now underway. Everything in the guest room is in shambles. I could get some shut-eye on the sofa, I proposed. Well, you see, Dad dove right in. We're having the living room painted too, and you know how small this house is. Each of their justifications was more obvious than the last. The barely disguised contentment in their tones was the most painful thing. The fact that I fell from grace actually made them joyful. I attempted to immerse myself in my work after locating a tiny apartment across town. However, out of nowhere, that place was also dysfunctional. There were edits to every report I sent in. Everyone questioned my every move. Mr. Blackwood finally summoned me to his office. Even though he had once been my career's savior, the man now avoided eye contact. Maybe it would be better if you thought about other opportunities, he said, shuffled papers on his desk to Bella. It would be our pleasure to supply a reference. I was severely depressed. I stayed in bed for a whole month after losing everything. Nobody from my family even bothered to phone or text to see if I was okay. It was unbearable. Sarah, thank God. Get up, she said as she stormed into my flat one morning, bringing bagels and coffee. This isn't the Bella I know. The Bella you knew had a life. I whispered into my pillow. No, my curtains were pulled open by her. I know a Bella who isn't afraid to fight, the one who rose from the ranks of housekeeping to executive administrator. She was the one who worked her way through college. I believe Bella is still hiding out there. The fact that I had always been frugal is a blessing. My own savings from years of working and living modestly were still available, even with the prenup. Having a backup plan is essential, as James had shown me. It dawned on me as I lay in bed, unable to move, staring at the ceiling. The hotel industry was second nature to me. I had managed the front desk and cleaned toilets. You name it, I was aware of the successes and failures as well as, most significantly, the desires of the guests. I informed Sarah during breakfast the following day that I was planning to launch my own hotel. With a gasp, she swallowed her coffee. That's ambitious. I told them, I've got savings for startup costs, but I'll need investors, while simultaneously compiling lists on my phone. And I know exactly what kind of hotel I want to create. Research, a comprehensive business strategy, and networking were my top priorities, so I dove headfirst into them. My dream of opening a boutique hotel that offered both high-end amenities and individualized service was met at a charity event for budding entrepreneurs when I met 2 investors who shared my enthusiasm. That first year was the worst. I was the go-to gal for every shift, whether it was reception during the day or nighttime paperwork. Due to my maid's flu, I once had to take over housekeeping duties for 3 days. But this time around, even the most draining moments seemed different. For my own benefit, I was constructing something at this time. The hotel started to flourish, albeit slowly. Our individualized approach and meticulousness became well known. We started to see a profit in the 3rd year. In the 5th year, I had repaid my investors in full and owned the hotel outright. All the while, nobody in my family said a word. They had erased all trace of my existence from their life to the point that I was invisible. There will be no more holiday parties, no more gatherings with relatives, nothing. In the beginning, it was painful. Over time, though, I came to see it as a blessing. When they were not around, I no longer had to deal with their subtle criticisms, comparisons, and feelings of inadequacy. It seems like old habits die hard, yet every now and then I would look at Katie's social media accounts. That's how I found out she had a baby and had finally found her wealthy man. Exotic holidays and luxury baby outfits filled her posts. She appeared to possess all the things she had ever desired. The time flew by in the span of 2 years. Not only was the hotel profitable, but it had also become the city's favorite spot for those looking for a more intimate, personalized experience. Travel bloggers have highlighted our establishment, complimenting our one-of-a-kind hospitality. I mentioned to my management team one morning that we ought to do something charitable, something big. Our first charity event came to fruition in that very same way. Inviting local celebrities, business leaders, and members of the press, we turned the hotel's majestic ballroom into a dazzling wonderland. Given my personal background in education, it was logical that the event's proceeds would go toward funding educational scholarships for disadvantaged youngsters. It was the most successful gala ever. Suddenly, I was the center of attention as local TV stations reported it and internet news sites carried pieces about the hotel owner's rags-to-riches story. My front desk manager contacted my office 3 days subsequently. "The lobby is where your folks are, Miss Bennett. Their want to see you is pretty strong. They insist on staying till you descend." I sighed deeply, smoothed my suit coat, and made my way to the lobby. Older but no less entitled than ever, there they were, Mom and Dad. "Bella." Mom hurried over to give you a bare embrace. It evaded me with ease. "Why are you here?" Coldly, I inquired. "Can't parents want to reconnect with their daughter?" Dad sounded distressed. "We are aware of your level of success. How proud we are." Proud. I let out a sharp chuckle. When I needed a place to stay following my divorce, you weren't proud. Those 7 years you skipped calling were not a source of pride for you. Water under the bridge. In a dismissive gesture, Mom waved her hand. Family should stick together in hard times. Speaking of which, she whispered something about conspiracies. Katie is going through a really tough time right now. She is now a single parent after her boyfriend abandoned her. Child support will not be paid by him. You could definitely lend a hand to your sister, right? How precisely are you expecting me to assist Katie? I asked, my voice tinged with morbid curiosity and a need for resolution. My mom's face brightened as she thought she had discovered a way in. Discuss the matter with the father of her child. Get him to see that he must provide for his child. It made me laugh out loud. Who is this guy that he would pay attention to me? Even I don't know who he is. Be more direct, Bella, Dad admonished. Sure, you're familiar with James. He was married to you, ultimately. For a split second, time seemed to stand still. All of a sudden, the puzzle pieces fit together with a gruesome precision. An enigmatic wealthy suitor who is dating my sister, the abrupt separation of my parents when my career died a tragic death. James? Shy whispered. Katie and James. I mean, it wasn't planned, Mom answered defensively. These things just happen. These things just happen. My pitch went up. My sister and my husband. Did you know that? Were you aware the whole time? Katie and James fell in love. Dad replied as if that put everything into perspective. We couldn't very well take sides. Couldn't take sides. Now I was on the verge of screaming. I assure you, you chose a side. You have removed me from your life. Without assistance, I was stranded, and you turned a blind eye. And you dare to come here and beg for my assistance now. Calm down, Mom remarked. It was all for the best in the end. Behold, you now own a hotel of your very own. So James did the right thing, having you fired from your old job. According to her, Katie thought it would be too awkward, you working there. I beheld my parents, the ones entrusted with my upbringing and the responsibility of loving and protecting me. For the first time, I realized that they were not Katie's supportive parents, but rather they were actively working to ruin my life. I whispered, "Leave." "Excuse me, Bella," Mom began to say. "Get out." My voice erupted into a scream. "Security." In an instant, 2 of my security personnel showed up. With my voice quivering with anger, I informed them, "These individuals are not allowed on the premises. No matter what, they will never be permitted to return to this hotel. Go with them." As soon as Dad started to say, "You ungrateful little," the guards escorted them to the exit. "You're going to be sorry you did this," Mom angrily said. "Family is all you have." "No," I yelled from behind them. "Family is supposed to love you, support you, protect you. You're not family. You're merely people that happen to parent me." I never spoke to my parents again after that. I learned about the aftermath through social media and common connections. The relationship between Katie and James fell apart catastrophically. In the midst of her daily tirades against him on social media, in which she accuses him of everything imaginable, he threatens to sue her for defamation. Due to a poor investment, my parents had to reduce the size of their property and their retirement funds. Meanwhile, my life has taken a lovely turn. 6 months ago, I met Michael at a hotel industry conference. He's nice, accomplished in his own right, and most importantly, he loves me for who I am, not what I can give him. We're getting married next spring. Sometimes, late at night, I go through Katie's angry social media rants about James, witnessing their dirty laundry being aired for all to see. I find myself chuckling at the cosmic justice of it all. My sister, who believed she'd gotten it all by stealing my husband, now publishes daily sob tales about being a single mom. James, who thought he'd upgraded to the better sister, is seeing his reputation get dragged through the mud. What about me? The sister they believed they had extinguished. I am flourishing. There will be a second site for my hotel next year. Best of all, I'm no longer tied down, and Michael and I are already plotting our joint future. Leaving behind the poisonous relatives that never genuinely cared for me. Getting even isn't always the finest kind of revenge. It entails enjoying life to the fullest while keeping one's distance from the sticky situation, ideally with a flute of champagne in one's hand.